How you doing? Uh, Today, what I thought would be sort of interesting to do. This morning we talked about, is it unscrewed up or is it still a problem? Okay. Is it working, Von Cruel? I mean, Brian, is the audio and video moving again? Okay, everything's working. Great. I don't know what happened. I've been having our water pump gave out, so everything everything happens at once. Uh, so anyway, I'm glad everything's working okay. Found out how to fix it. I found out the right one to hit on here and do everything, so everything's working. That's good to see. Hi, Michael. Allie, good to see you. Damon, hi. Let's see. Hi, UK Watch Guru. Great. Okay, good. Well, anyway, uh, let me start off with this one. This is one I recently got. This is the Vacheron Constantin Mercator. Okay, I mentioned this before, and the thing of it is that the two hands are sort of coming from the top, like a compass. Okay, got my compass here. I mean, they look like one of these things. All right, now the question isn't so much that what a compass is, but how did they get this to work? And if you look at the back of the watch, let me start with the front here. Hang on, I got every. Actually, I sort of have everything else ready. Okay, start sharing. Okay, this is what it looks like, and in fact it looks almost identical to a map compass. This is not the same as what I consider a regular compass. Okay, so how do they do that? Well, it's a retrograde essentially, and so the hour hand right here. I mean, the hour hand goes up here, and then when it gets to here, it jumps back. The minute hand goes up to here and then jumps back. So the question is how do they do that? And one of the things that I found was that if you look at the back of the watch, like we usually look at a movement, and you take a look at the back. Here's the back of the Mercator. Okay, the back of the Mercator is looks pretty much like the back of most other watches. Here you've got the balance cock and the balance, and this is the winding gear and so forth. Then you have a great big old rotor there that blocks everything out. If that rotor were taken off, you still couldn't see a lot about how the hands work. And this is the interesting thing about a lot of the complications is that the complication is on the dial side. So if you flip a watch over, chances are you're not going to see much about the movement that does the complication. So what I was able to do is to hang on a second. Let me bring this up. I was able to get a picture of this is actually what makes everything work. Here you have this unusual looking snail cam, and the snail cam has got these bumps in it. And so when this is for the 24 hours, it goes bumpity bumpity bump. And I'm not sure exactly how the other one works, but I think it has something to do with this mechanism right here, and it ticks along. How exactly, I don't know. I've I was fortunate, fortunately, I understand snail cams, but there are a lot of other mechanisms, on special things like that, that are, still a mystery that I'm finding out more about. Okay, yeah, thanks, Van Crew. One hell yeah. Yeah, hard to read time, I agree. This this guy, what you do with it is you pay attention. I mean, this is a watch, like, who's, "You're not paying attention to me." What? Anyhow, um, you really have to look at it, and it's sort of fun, and there's nothing wrong with that, but in terms of, like, at a glance, sometimes it's better to have just, regular hands and, hours and so forth. I never look at the second hands anyway. Um, this is like our Lyrique number 1. This is the one you can glance at it and tell right off the bat what time it is, and you don't have to think about it. It's not it's just sort of that kind of watch. Now, these complications, we all understand how a watch works. Is that you got the barrel provides, it has a mainspring, and as it unwinds, it moves the gear, it goes through the gear train, and it doesn't move them per se. It provides the tension so that they will move. And so down at the other end, you have the escapement, and the escapement with the pallet, um, what is it called? A pallet hammer. I don't know. It's a little hammer that goes back and forth. Uh, and that swings the hairspring that goes 280 degrees in one direction or another, and moving so that um, oh, come on, what's the name of that? The pallet fork. That's it, the pallet fork. So the pallet fork is opening and closing the escapement. Well, okay, we understand. But once we get away from that, it's like, oh, what's going on here? Um, so there we have for a starter. Um, hey, Mark, good to see you, Tim. Oh, come on, you guys. Hi, John. Um, escargot cam. That's that's the fancy way. That I think is the official term, Michael. Makes the time pass more slowly. Yeah. I'm gonna talk about that, as a matter of fact. That's another mechanism. Here's another watch that is, their empathy. This is the Impatient, um, one for an appointment, by Hermes. Let me bring this guy up and show it to you. Okay, now the theme behind uh, this watch is one which is basically saying, okay, you have an appointment, and an hour before the appointment, this one kicks in. I don't know how. Well, you've got two crowns here for setting it, and so this whole mechanism is working. I'm not sure how or what. Hermes went to Agenor and they did the module for it. And let's take a look at what. Well, we can look at I was able to find images of the movement and what it looks like. Okay, now the movement itself is that moving along this track right here, something is going on here. I'm not sure what it is. And they have some of these like these different kinds of things that are happening. Now, this is from the back side rather than the dial side where you usually see everything. And um, this is this great big plate right here. You can't see a thing, but here you see something, and I'm not sure what they are. You can't see the barrels. I don't know where the barrel is. They've got this guy right here that looks something like an escapement, but it looks more like a buzz saw. And so there's something interesting going on. And for me, anyway, they're simply a bunch of more mysteries to solve and find out more about it and what's going on. Okay, now let me show you the final one that I got for show and tell. And it's one of my favorite, and I actually sort of understand it a little better. And that is the the movement uh, f- from the true second, the Jaeger-LeCoultre true second. Now, here, the interesting thing about it is that this right here is a spring that at first I thought it was a total remontoire, but it's not, but it sort of does something like that. This is right here, and then here's your true second. Excuse me. But it's set up this way so that the true second jumps because of that spring. And so the old spring down here, I gotta find it. There it is. This spring right here is really the one that makes it jump. All of this for this one jumping second hand. I thought, wow, this is really cool. This is another thing too that's sort of interesting with this, and this is this balance. I don't know what you'd call it. Like it looks like a pitch, like it looks like a pick or something. I forgot what the name is. And here you have a standard hairspring, and then there's your pallet fork and your escapement and everything else. But and then here, of course, is your wheel train. But right here in the middle of the wheel train, there's all of this work just so that it'll have the jumping seconds. And I thought that's one of the things about this movement that I really like. It's not what you see because I tell you, the design of the watch itself, it looks like a school wall clock. It really isn't very, very interesting at all. But boy, on the inside, it's really cool. Okay, that was what. Thanks, John. Some people helped me out. I jammed up on something. Normal regulator watches are hard to get used to as well. You mean, normal ones. Damon, what do you mean by a normal regulator? That would be like well, yeah, if you just mean any regulator or understanding that whole mechanism, it can be a challenge. I agree with that. Yeah. Oh, thanks, John D. Yeah, I went and they our part of our driveway got messed up by the snow plow and big things that I tripped over it and I used my head as a block so I wouldn't hurt my watch. Okay, so let's see what you guys have to say. Oh, Abdullah, I like that too. I like the basic. To me, what the real interesting thing is that how do they take? Because most of these watches will have a just a basic movement underneath them, and then you have that the module put on top of it, and the module is where the whole show is from, really. Instead of the hour gear, it, runs the snail gear. Yeah, John, that's right. That's exactly right. The snail gear runs on the same movement timing is going around as a normal, hour wheel or minute wheel or whatever you have that you're going to have a retrograde on. And what you have to do, and this is why snail cams are so important, is that they have to expand so that they're sort of followed by like a looks like a bird beak, and the bird beak, and then it hits a what I'll call the drop, and then it goes like this, and then it kicks the hand, whatever kind of hand it is. But the timing of the movement of the snail cam is that way. By the way, too, that was we just in the Air Zulu watch we're working on. Finally our we got the new gear for the I think it's for the hour snail cam. We have a double snail cam on the other one. So that's another. What are some other specialized mechanisms that you find interesting um, that go beyond the basic barrel, wheel train, escapement, balance wheel, that sequence? Yeah, Abdul. Oddly enough, there is actually something for the layman in the jumping second, and that's for doctors. They used to call them doctors' watches if they had the jumping seconds because they used it for pulse timing. You know, having spent the better part of yesterday in an emergency room, I was I now I'm an expert on medical stuff. No, it's anyway. Harboring does a deadbeat seconds watch. Yeah. Harboring does a lot of cool things. One of the things that Harboring does, and I think they originally did it for, I think it was IWC where Richard Harboring used to work. That I think was the Doppel. He solved some kind of Doppel problem for IWC. I think it was IWC. And so for whatever, I don't know what kind of deal they have with that, but he uses it on some of his watches. And there's some very interesting complications. But see, this is the thing about a company that has a real watchmaker or is dealing with real watchmakers as opposed to someone who's sort of made a copy of or you know sort of went on an ETA and call it their own. Yeah, Rancher. That's what happened. I was bad mouthing a silicone hairspray and it hit me in the eye. Served me right. Hi, Brandon. How you doing? Hi, Yama. Remontois is definitely on top of my list. Mine too, but it's unfortunately it seems to be on top of the cost list too. They're very expensive, but boy, I tell you, it'd be nice to have one. Um, You never know though. Somebody can sell one in a pawn shop and get almost nothing for it. The guy in the pawn shop doesn't know a remontois from a pickaxe, and so he sells it to you for a great price. Or better yet, sells it to me and I don't let anybody know until after I got it. I have a habit of doing that. Atmospheric clocks, they get winded by changing atmospheric pressure. That is an interesting thing. Um, a lot of this stuff began really with clocks because if you take a balance wheel and you look at any of the arms in it and they're going back and forth, that's what happens, but they go it around one way and then around another, and it generates the same kind of wheeling, swinging motion that a pendulum has. Alarm function watches have a designated separate mainsprings. Yeah, right, Damon, that's right, they do. I've got a, uh, pole jot, alarm because since I can't my hearing's not so good, it's almost non-existent, but you wind up there's one you wind up for the alarm and then one you wind up for the other one. The reason you need it is just like in toys, you got one big mainspring that you wind up and go from there with it. Constant force mechanisms aren't just any kind, really. I agree. And here's the thing, Von Cruel. This is what I wanted to sort of kick around today is that they are interesting, but how do they work? And I don't know. I suppose I got to pull out my Daniel's watchmaking book because they'll have something about just about everything and tell you how to machine it and do everything else you have to with it. But you're right. Hi, Mark. How you doing? Oh, thanks. I like the simple idea to prevent winding, unwinding the mainspring outside of certain limits, 20 to 80%. Yeah, isn't that how a Maltese cross works? Something like that? Hi, HRM. Big fan of Fuzzy and Chain, but they are incredibly expensive. Not only that, but I think Fuzzy and chains are also pretty big. That there are lots and lots of affordable Fuzzy and chains on sort of the on pocket watches. If you go looking for a Fuzzy and chain one on like Chrono 24 or eBay, you can probably find one in a pocket watch. Ali, Ulysse Nardine Astrolabium has amazing functions. Astrolabe is an astronomical instrument that provide representing the sky projected into a plane. Wow. You know something, Ali? I'm glad you brought that up because, God, I think it was 2017 or 16 or one of those years. There was a watch by Ulysse Nardine. It's still one of my favorite watches. It was called the Regatta, and they had this really cool countdown mechanism in there. So did the Yachtmaster 2 that Rolex got rid of. And they got these great mechanisms. They had the Faraday box, which is probably I can understand why they got rid of it because they had, I think their Parachrome hairspring was at the point where they didn't need the Faraday box. But I liked the idea of having a Faraday box, and it was on both the Milgauss as well as the Air King. And in fact, that's if I got a Rolex, it'd probably be something like that. Get an Air King that is sort of the newest version that was still using it. Now they're using that Oyster Perpetual on their movements, which isn't a bad movement. It's just, you know, Von Crew. Fortunately, I don't have a taste for heavy complications. I me neither, but I do have the complications I really like are something that will tell time in an interesting way. But this is why I'm not a big chronograph fan. Chronographs, boy, those, they're not simple at all. And so I agree with you. On the one hand, not a big complicated watch fan, except as it involves something like a Remontois or something, even a Fusée chain would be something I say, "Oh, that looks interesting." I tried a pawn shop once, and I was so disappointed by what they had, I never went back. We don't have very good pawn shops where I live. The the Bloomfield pawn shop probably ought to go to a pawn shop in New York, but if I went to a pawn shop in New York, they'd probably know the price of the watch down to the mill. Yeah, the review Dorman, those are fairly affordable too. Ball also makes watches, with mechanical, thermometers inside. There's some company that makes mechanical watches with an altimeter, and I'm trying to remember the name of the which one did it, but they had an altimeter that you could get in your watch, in a mechanical watch. I mean, there's nothing to it in a, smartwatch, but in a mechanical watch, it was, I think, quite a feat. Yeah, not cool. That was talk about. There's a young Japanese, watchmaker that recently made a mechanical metronome, for watchmaking school. Very promising watchmaker. Oh, geez. There's a metronome in one of the watches. It may have been a Parmigiani. It was sort of a special version. It may have even been one of the Chaumet dandies that had one in it. But that would be one I would really like to get my mitts on. Of course, I'd probably just sit in my case, watch the metronome. Hi, Peter. Watching from the UK. I'm an oasis of calm. Here, other than the pub fights I get into, I'm okay. Try to behave myself. I got a jump hour from 1976 made from a horological school in Geneva. Wow. Sold it for quite a good profit. Still regret selling it. Yeah, I would too. What are you thinking? I'm selling my Mono Rattrapant, my Beauvais Mono Rattrapant, and I'll probably right now, I haven't really been trying too hard, but if I do, I'll probably regret it down the road. Von Cruel, I'm the same way. Any constant force mechanism just makes it more interesting. That's why I like about those Fave Ruba sub those Lave Rub Luba Fave Luba. Um, what are they called? Twin timing or something like that with the double barrels in parallel. Those are cool. Uh-oh, frying pan time. Okie doke. I better scoot. Yeah, I'll I'll have I'll have matching eyes if I don't. I just sort of look like a half a raccoon right now. Anyway, guys, thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time. Take care.